Thank you. We have two speakers on this application. First being Mr. Mark Brophy, a local resident, speaking in favour of the application. If you'd like to come forward, Mr. Brophy.
I speak in support of the changes proposed for the Martello Lakes development. However, I wish to draw your attention to an important misunderstanding that appears to exist regarding the Section 106 agreement within which the planning officer has identified within his report for renegotiation. This concerns the community sports and leisure facilities for which land is earmarked for transfer to the authority if desired. The current agreement makes provision for an index-linked £3.2 million which can be claimed by the authority to build a sports and leisure facility in the Hythe area when the 250th house has been completed. What the authority does not appear to have recognised is that this provision is equally applicable were the leisure centre to be built within the Martello Lakes development. In other words, a substantial land asset becomes available in addition to a cash contribution, now worth in excess of £5 million. This is not a land or money situation, it is both. It is important to ensure that when the Section 106 agreement is renegotiated, that the Council also retains the cash provision for the Martello Lakes option. If this is not specifically identified now, it could well be lost in negotiation, because the Council officers incorrectly believe that such a provision does not currently exist. I ask, therefore, that when approving this application, this requirement is clearly flagged up and explicitly recognised. You may wonder why this matters, since the leisure centre is currently destined for Prince's Parade. It remains important because the viability of the scheme at Prince's Parade is still questionable. There are currently no financial figures which can be relied upon, and the results of the initial investigations have not yet been published. There is a serious concern that when the costs and risks of Prince's Parade have been correctly determined, the scheme will not be viable, principally on financial grounds. The authority may also suffer an unacceptable level of retained risk. It is essential that the full scope of the Martello Lakes agreement is kept, since it remains the most financially advantageous and feasible option, as was found by Strategic Leisure when they undertook their feasibility study in 2014. My aim in raising this point is to ensure that the residents of Hythe do indeed get the replacement swimming pool that they have been promised. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lloyd, the Chief Planning Officer, wants to just pick up on one or 2 points. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good evening, councillors. Just to assist members in their debate this evening on this application, I'd like to clarify. As set out at paragraph 7.95 of the committee report, the obligations within the original Section 106 relating to the sports and leisure contribution, and indeed the land, which is covered by paragraph 7 of the Section 106, are not altered by this proposal, and in fact are all payable as per the original agreement up to the 400 houses following a recent deed of variation. There is no need to involve that Section 106 because it is already covered by the extant Section 106 which governs the use of the land, and that is not altered by this proposal. It's also worth remembering that this application is not related to Prince's Parade in its direct form, and the sports and leisure contribution can be used either on site, including the land and the money, or on any other site within the Hythe area should the council choose to exercise that right. I hope that helps in sort of debating the matters before us, which is the 600 new homes and the re-proposed layout of the scheme.
Councillor Jim Martin, speak.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a number of points to make here. The first, if I can just pick up on Llewellyn's clarification. So the leisure centre built here would be the £3.2 million indexed plus the land.
That is one of the options available under the Section 106. The original terms of the Section 106 in relation to the sports and leisure plus the land associated with it. If the council chooses to exercise that particular option, which I believe is section and paragraph 7 of the original Section 106, is not altered because the trigger for payment of that money and securing of that land is within the first 400 houses on a time date. So any house above 400 would mean that the original triggers in Section 106 and security provided by that Section 106 are retained. Any subsequent Section 106 attached to this application, should it be approved tonight, would link the two together to make sure that there's clarity across the two planning permissions, but the original Section 106 in relation to the sports and leisure contribution and the land available and the paragraphs therein are not affected by this development and this application this evening. So hopefully that's the security that I think has been raised by the public speaker this evening, that the options are still open to this council in however which way it chooses to go forward, but they're not material to tonight's planning application, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much for that clarification. So David Monk's recent assertion that it was an and or deal was wrong, that it is land and money if the leisure centre is built at Martello Lakes.
I think I wouldn't want to speak for the leader of the council. What I'm saying tonight is that it's the provisions of the original Section 106 are not changed by the current planning application.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you very much. So if the leisure centre, this isn't a question, I'm talking, you can rest easy. So if the leisure centre is built at Nichols Quarry, I think as the speaker was, it was built at Princess Parade, I think as the speaker was pointing out, that would be a loss to the district of, I think it's 1.6 hectares of land, because obviously the leisure centre would be elsewhere. And I think that's the issue that has really plagued the whole viability discussion. Some of you may recall I asked the leader this in the Q&A, and we had something of a discussion about it. But this really is a key issue. So as much as we would like to separate this from the development of Princess Parade, it is impossible, because the leisure centre is a fundamental part of both schemes. Where this leisure centre lands in Hythe is critically important, for everybody in the district. In many ways, more important for the people of the Marsh, because it will be on the west side of Hythe. Or if it's at Princess Parade, it will be on the extreme east side of Hythe. So, but thank you for that clarification.